Russia's unemployment rate just hit 2.1%, the lowest in the country's recorded history.
That sounds like an economic miracle. It is not. It is what a labor famine looks like. Hundreds of thousands mobilized to the front. Hundreds of thousands more who fled the country. The factories kept their orders. They ran out of people to fill them. Russia in 2026 is a country running on contradictions, and almost none of the stories being told about it from either side are the full picture. But by 2026, those machines, built by Western manufacturers, are running without spare parts. The clones are operating on borrowed time. The sanctions that failed to collapse Russia. The economy actually grew by 1.4% in 2022, then 4.1% in 2023, then 4.9% in 2024, one of the fastest growth rates in Europe that year. The collapse never came. And what 144 million Russians actually believe about the war they are living inside. The labor famine nobody predicted. The foreign workers quietly replacing a missing generation. The economy that was supposed to collapse and didn't. Russia pivoted east. Oil kept flowing to China, India, and the Gulf. Tax revenue held. The collapse never came. But in 2025, the growth rate fell to just 1%. The defense sector kept the economy moving. Almost everything else stagnated. Russia did not collapse. It calcified. The IMF had predicted a 15% GDP contraction. What they got was a minor recession and a rapid pivot. Almost nobody reported the correction. The average Russian salary has jumped to roughly 100,000 rubles a month, around 1,100 USD. But don't be fooled. Food inflation is running above 7 to 8%. A new 2% VAT increase introduced specifically to fund military spending hits every single purchase. That wage increase largely disappears before it reaches the pocket. And yet Russian society hasn't collapsed. The reason is hiding in plain sight. Russia has a home ownership rate above 90%, one of the highest in the world. A legacy of Soviet-era privatization, apartments handed directly to the people living in them. No mortgage, no rent. When inflation eats your salary and war taxes hit every purchase, owning your home is the single biggest buffer against total economic despair. It is the shock absorber nobody talks about. The baseline cost of survival in Russia is genuinely low. A metro ride, under 30 cents. A full canteen meal at a Stolovaya, under $3. University education largely subsidized. Healthcare universal. The system holds together not because the finances are healthy, but because the floor was built decades ago and nobody pulled it out. So who is actually doing the work? Russia has lost hundreds of thousands of workers to the front and to immigration. Who is building the roads? Who is staffing the factories? The answer is changing Russia in ways almost no Western outlet is covering. In 2025 alone, Russia issued over 36,000 visas to North Korean nationals, a fourfold increase from the year before. Nearly all were classified as education visas. Investigators have confirmed this is how Russia bypasses the UN ban on employing North Korean workers. The conditions these workers face have been documented by international investigators. 16-hour days, no rest days, mandatory monthly payments to the North Korean state regardless of what they actually earned. Workers living in unheated containers in Russian winters earning as little as $10 a month. This is not a labor solution. It is state-sponsored forced labor, and Russia is currently the world's largest importer of it. Workers from India, Central Asia, and parts of Africa are filling gaps in manufacturing and logistics. The workforce rebuilding Russian infrastructure in 2026 is increasingly not Russian. This is not a temporary patch. It is a structural shift, and it tells you everything about where the real pressure in this economy sits. But what about the war itself? What do Russians actually believe? Privately, not officially. The Levada Center, Russia's only independent polling organization, shows a picture that splits in two. Support for the military operation remains at around 72%. Those two numbers coexist. Russians can back their military and simultaneously want the war to end. That is not hypocrisy. That is what exhaustion looks like in a country where dissent carries real consequences. 1 million Russians left. This is the population that would most visibly oppose the war at home. Their absence reshapes what Russian public opinion even means. Stop. Russia is not one place. It is 190 officially recognized ethnic groups: Arctic tundra, subtropical coastline, Central Asian steppe, Pacific fishing towns. When we talk about Russians as if they are a single, unified bloc, we are not being analytical. We are being lazy. The Trans-Siberian Railway runs nearly 10,000 kilometers, the longest railway in the world. Along that route, Kazan, a majority Muslim republic with a UNESCO World Heritage Mosque and a Kremlin sitting side by side. Lake Baikal, the world's deepest lake, holding 20% of the planet's unfrozen fresh water. Vladivostok, a Pacific port city that looks and feels more like Seoul than Moscow. Most Westerners have never heard of any of this, because none of it fits the story being told. Before we get to what Russians actually believe about the war they are living inside, if this video is giving you the real picture behind the headlines, subscribing keeps Global Uncovered alive. We go inside a new country every week. No surface level takes, no propaganda from either direction, just the reality. Subscribe takes 2 seconds. Now, back to Russia and the question nobody in Western or Russian media wants to answer honestly. Both sides have an interest in a simplified Russia. The Kremlin wants a unified, victimized nation rallying behind its military. Western governments want a straightforwardly villainous opponent. Both narratives erase the actual complexity of 144 million people living across 1/8 of the Earth's land surface. Both make it easier to justify decisions, military, political, economic, that affect real lives on both sides. Russia gave the world Tolstoy and Dostoevsky, Tchaikovsky and Shostakovich, the first human in space. Some of the most advanced mathematics, physics, and chess in history. The country that produced all of that didn't disappear in 2022. It is still there, still complicated, underneath a government much of its own educated class has quietly chosen to leave. There are children in Russia right now learning English, watching YouTube, dreaming about traveling the world. There are grandmothers growing vegetables at dachas outside Tula who have never heard the word sanction. There are engineers in Novosibirsk solving problems the world needs solved. Reducing 144 million people to their government's decisions isn't analysis. It is the same dehumanization we criticize when it is directed at anyone else. Russia in 2026 is a country running on contradictions. Historic low unemployment that is actually a crisis. Rising wages being eaten alive by inflation and war taxes. A workforce being quietly replaced by foreign labor. A public that supports its military and simultaneously wants it to stop. Russia in 2026 is not the country Western media says it is. It is not the country the Kremlin says it is either. It is something more uncomfortable than both. A nation that has learned to function inside a permanent state of crisis. held together by Soviet-era housing, a labor market running on foreign workers no one is allowed to talk about, a public that supports its military and simultaneously wants it to stop.
That is not strength. That is endurance. And endurance has a limit.